So you buy a box to spend your entire life trying to pay off that box. It doesn't make any sense. And that is what Mr. Beast said in a podcast. And I'm a millennial right now, in my 30s, and everyone around me that is around my age, they're either all getting married, or they're buying houses, or they're doing both. And I'm just here standing on the sidelines thinking, y'all are falling into millennial debt traps. So last month I was back in Vancouver, British Columbia, visiting friends and family, and I was in Burrard visiting a friend. And if you guys are familiar with Burrard, it is downtown Vancouver. And I was trying to check out what's up with him. I mean, he recently broke up with his girlfriend, and surprisingly, he's doing very well. Newly single, and we got onto the topic of how everyone around us, around our age, were either getting married or they were buying homes, and both of us just weren't into that. I mean, he himself has a really good situation. He is living in downtown Vancouver in a rent-controlled apartment, so his rent is $1,800 per month. That is fantastic. And explaining the lifestyle of how everybody around him is like, oh, you should buy a home. But for me, I was like, dude, I agree with you. I mean, we're single and we have no family. We don't really have a very good reason to buy a home. So on the flip side, he mentioned an ex-coworker of his from Samsung. The girl apparently bought herself a $900K condo for pre-sale and is paying that off on a $90K salary from Samsung. So I asked Bard how much interest she could be paying, right? And I used a conservative 3% interest rate. Maybe she got it before all the craziness happens with the interest rates. And it said that her estimated monthly payment is $2,700. So about half her income goes to mortgage payments. And let's say that for the average single person living in Vancouver, monthly expenses is around $1,600, not counting rent, and that's per month. Add on an emergency fund of, let's say, $1,000 per month. She basically has nothing to live on, because if you take her mortgage interest that she has to pay, which is $2,700, divided by her monthly income, which is $5,400, that accounts for 50% of her income. So honestly speaking, I don't think that I can really falter for that, because I do recognize that homes are assets, and I've really never owned a home, so I can't really say anything about that. I've rented all my life, and to be completely transparent, my rent is right now $1,800 per month. And do you want to know how much my monthly salary is? It's around $5,400 per month. So if you make the calculations, it's about 33% of my monthly take home that actually goes to rent. So for people who call themselves six-figure earners, after taxes, you're not really a six-figure earner, which makes me feel like I am a fake six-figure earner. And if you're curious about how much rent should actually be, like the percentage of the income, it is 30%. And back when I was in Virginia, Fairfax, Virginia, they were trying to raise my rent to $2,200. That would make it around 40% of my income, and I said no. So that's the big reason I left Virginia. So I got priced out and I voted with my feet, and I ended up in Dallas, which I like a lot more. And that's the great thing about being a renter, because there's no maintenance. Let's say like a water heater broke. Well, I'm not in charge of that. The landlord will have to shell out the $2,000 to buy a new water heater. And for me as a renter, I can move whenever I want it. I mean, moving out of Virginia, it was like a snap decision. I was like, I don't want to be here anymore, because the laws regarding owning a car and everything was just a big hassle, and I always get traffic violations, or I always drive too fast, so they always get me on that. So that's like a couple reasons why I was like, I can't live in Virginia, because they're too strict on everything. So that's how I ended up in Texas. All right, is it just me, or do your parents and friends who are homeowners look at their property value assessment and think they're rich? Because that's exactly my parents. You see, my parents are low income. They've always been low income. They are financially illiterate because they came over to Canada as immigrants, so they still don't speak any English with little education. 20 or 30 years ago, they
bought the current house that they're still in, that I grew up in. And back then, houses were much more affordable than they are now. So right now, our family home is valued, I think, around $1.5 million. And they're always bragging about how much money they're sitting on. Now, my uncle, on the other hand, I went back to Vancouver last month and he was just complaining to me over dinner that the government was scamming him. You see, he did the same thing, bought his houses, yes, 3 houses, 20 to 30 years ago. And one of those houses is right now valued at $1.4 million. But the problem was that the building value was only worth $44,000. But because his land is valued at $1.4 million, he has to pay property taxes on the $1.4 million rather than the $44,000. So for him, the government is just plain ripping him off. And since Vancouver is ran by the woke, my uncle had a tenant who became a squatter, and the guy just didn't leave. He didn't pay rent, didn't pay the bills for electricity or water, and he just squatted there for a year. And my uncle and aunt were trying to get the guy to leave. They took him to court and they lost the court case, though they managed to evict him. So I don't know, it really felt like he was pretty bitter about that experience being a homeowner in Vancouver, Canada. And it just feels like the environment in owning a home, in Vancouver at least, is very anti-homeowner. But I don't know, I've been out of Canada for almost a decade now, so if you're a Vancouverite still living there, what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. But you really want to know what I think about homes being a debt trap? I think that if you are getting ready to start a family, I think that is a great time to buy a home because it's a different environment, different situation. Maybe homes aren't all millennial debt traps because what's priceless are memories, the laughters and the cries that one has at their own childhood home, which could be the good part of the debt trap. While you're single, you can go enjoy your freedom and move wherever you want. But if you're thinking of starting a family, when you have kids to think about, I think stability really does give them certain advantages. They turn out better than if a child was moving from one place to another year after year. I just feel from a personal point of view that having stability is really important for a kid. For me, I grew up in the same home for a good 18 years until I was ready to move out on my home. And I think I turned out pretty good. I don't know what you guys think though. And it is all thanks to that stability. But that's just my personal opinion. I don't have kids yet. But if you guys have opinions, let me know. What do you think?